Hello everyone, today we are talking with Will Billingsley. He is co-founder and CCO at ApTap. It's a London FinTech startup. It's very interesting to speak
Good
with
to
him.
be here.
Hi
Thank
Will.
you for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor for us to. Will you share about your experience a little bit? How the idea has came to you? How this startup has been founded?
So quickly at ApTap, we're building bill and subscription management tools, basically trying to help people manage their bills. So being able to cancel, compare, switch or sign up to services all from within your existing bank account. So we do things like energy or mobile or broadband comparison based on your user profile, kind of how you spend your money, how you use your services. We can then say, well, here are the best deals for you and help you switch over or cancel things you don't want anymore, or even discover new services. So we actually started the business, myself and two co-founders, we're all at university together in London. And we learned about open banking. So the concept of open banking is basically mandating or kind of forcing banks to open up customer data in a secure way. And that includes like your name, your address, your transactions, right? And so we were thinking, hey, surely we could do something really cool here and start to link people's spending to their carbon footprint. Quickly realized there wasn't too much of a business model in the kind of green space just yet. And so we pivoted into more of a kind of budgeting tool. And then the more feedback we got from customers and the more feedback we got from banks as well, we decided to focus in on the kind of control or action step for customers. And that's kind of how we've ended up where we are now. And so we have an app online. It's a web-based application, aptap.co.uk, and then we are also doing our first kind of rollout with a big bank in the UK over the next couple of weeks or so.
Do you have some investors or some support, or is it just only bootstrap?
Yeah, we raised a little bit of money at the beginning. So we started the company 2 years ago through family and friends. And then last summer, we raised a kind of pre-seed round, about £300,000. To really take us kind of off the ground. So the first kind of 50K was to validate the idea and start to prototype things. And then when we kind of raised that first big sum of money, then that allowed us to hire our head developer, and kind of he joined our CTO, one of the co-founders, Isa. And then with that, we started to really build out the product itself. So we were talking with banks, we were talking with customers, we were talking with service suppliers, and really trying to get into what value we could offer each of these at the same time. And that's allowed us to build out what we've just launched about 6 weeks ago, which is our kind of own platform. And so what we've done is build kind of microservices, APIs that will kind of either manage your energy or manage your broadband or phone or whatever it is, as well as an algorithm that parses customers' transactions to understand what bills and subscriptions they have. And so that money kind of allowed us to get to where we are now, and for the next few months. But we will be raising another round of capital towards the end of the summer.
Do you use some machine learning, artificial intelligence to compare some prices to predict something, or how does it work
Yeah,
currently?
so we've kind of done that with our subscription detection stuff. So you have a list of transactions, and we can say, based on like the name of the transaction, and how much you're paying and how often, whether or not it is a subscription. So is it like monthly? Is it every 3 months? Is it every 6 months? And so what we've started to do now is start to build in the kind of machine learning aspects of that. Say, well, we know it's a provider that does subscriptions, so we're more confident or less confident, and then we can kind of score it on like red, amber, green score of how confident are we that this is a subscription. So what we've seen so far is about 95% plus accuracy on that, which is really great. The comparison stuff, yes, but it's not too difficult. So we get in links from all of these service providers with their deals, and then we have bots that kind of go through those to say, okay, here are the cheapest deals, or here are the green deals, or here are the highest rated ones. And so, things like Trustpilot or rating agencies, you can pull those scores pretty easily. But for when we start talking about kind of machine learning, it's about how do we go into those services on behalf of the user and start pulling their usage information. So how many gigabytes of data did you use on your phone that month? And then comes the kind of AI stuff that merges your spending analysis with your usage analysis to say, okay, you're this kind of profile, and therefore here are the deals that would suit who you are.
I see. That's actually a very interesting idea, but why banks, for example, cannot create such a tool within their applications, for example?
It's about scale. So, right, just looking at the UK, right, so we're based in the UK, we'll look to kind of get off into the rest of the world soon, but there are, over 3,000 different subscription services in the UK alone. And so for a bank, is this a core banking proposition? No, it's not a current account, it's not savings, it's not a financial product, but it is a tool that will help them engage their customers, and it is a tool that will drive revenue for the bank through the kind of commission model. And that revenue isn't tied to kind of interest rates, right? So that's a big thing for the bank, especially now with interest rates probably as low as they've ever been. And so it's a toss-up for a bank whether they want to go and spend the time and resources building out all of these different connections, both relationships and technology. Whereas if they plug into us, right, we can take 2, 3, 4 banks and kind of amalgamate or bring together their user base. And so instead of a bank with 5 million and another bank with 10 million doing it individually, we can turn around and say we have 15 million people. And so we can turn to service suppliers and start to get better deals because of that. It's just leverage, really.
I see. And do you plan to provide your service as a model to banks, for example, or what is your current plans about business model?
So first we looked at the consumer facing space, so like an app itself, but there's a lot of costs associated with customer acquisition, as I'm sure most people in the industry will know.
Yeah.
So we decided to white label the service and offer the APIs to banks to give to their customers purely for scale, right? And for us, it's a distribution channel. Basically what we're doing is saying, okay, from a customer perspective, increase awareness of what's happening in my bank accounts and subscriptions and little ecosystem of me versus what's going on out here in the marketplace. And then as we bring the two together, we put the bank in the middle of that. And the bank can become more of like a trusted advisor for that customer. And so for us, it's about value add to customers, being able to take action very easily. For banks, driving engagement and new revenue. And then for service suppliers, it's new digital channels into customers at the source, right? So you're thinking, oh, I'm spending how much on my phone bill? Why can't you just take the action right there and then find the best deal and switch? And so, yes, it's a SaaS model. It will be kind of licensed to banks based on volume, tiered based on volume. But at the same time, right, every time we switch, let's say you switch your energy or gas or broadband internet provider, we would then make a commission. So I just switched from British Gas to Tonic Energy last week, and ApTap will take commission from that. And so what we'll do is share that commission with the bank, and it allows us, in taking the licensing fee from the bank, to kind of ignore how much commission we'll make. So we can cover our kind of baseline with that licensing fee, and then we can promote things in a way that's not biased. So it's not going to be, oh, here's the best deal because we make the most commission. It will be, here's the best deal because based on your usage and your financial profile, this is the best deal for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds very logical, actually. Can you please describe a little bit more detailed how your application works like? Because from the information which I got from your website, it's like it doesn't explain in details for me. Why should I, for example, use this application just to compare the prices? I mean,
so
why?
it goes back to that kind of internal external thing I was speaking about before, right? So we can offer you that kind of peace of mind, that awareness over what you're actually spending. So the UK on average spends about £2 billion a year on subscriptions, and that's not kind of gas, electricity, broadband, phone. It's like Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime, that sort of thing. And so when we're looking at the kind of trends in the UK, we'll see about a fifth of the population or the households will switch energy every year. But between energy and broadband, the average UK household could save about £500 a year. And the first part of that is just awareness, right? It's how much am I actually spending now? And most people won't know. They might have an idea, oh, I'm spending, 30 to 70 pounds a month on energy. But that's a big difference, right? And if I'm, a new parent, or I've just moved, I'm a young professional, or even if I'm a wealthier individual, I have different motivations, right? But a large proportion of that will come into how do I save money? And that might mean someone gets a holiday, right, that year, or they can put into a savings fund or into a retirement fund or something like that. And so the first piece is about awareness, understanding what your priorities are as a customer. And, the first steps for that are about understanding your spending and your usage. We'd like to do more in terms of interacting with the customer as we go forward. And then the other side of that is understanding what's happening out on the market. And that's what the kind of price comparison sites will do. But they're called price comparison sites, whereas we're more about kind of the people comparison, as it were, understanding who you are and comparing things to your deals based on who you are, right? So we've had a couple of people switch, and we've done some customer interviews, and they said, I went for the one I knew I was going to be paying £10 a month more, but I'm a green-minded person, so I went with the green energy provider instead of the oil and gas provider. And so that's a really nice use case for us because it resonates with what we're doing. So more technically, how does it work? It's you link your bank account to us, and we've done that through kind of open banking. So in Europe, banks have been mandated to kind of open up secure APIs to link accounts. And so I can link, 2, 3, 4, 100 account, whatever I want. I can see all my payments, my recurring payments in one place. We do the comparison automatically, and then you're able to just switch or cancel or sign up to things with the click of a button. And what we're trying to get to is really a kind of app store or like a subscription store. And really it's this kind of affiliate marketplace, right? For anything you pay on a recurring basis.
Well, I see, I agree. Actually, subscriptions is always a headache because every month, even a lot of subscriptions, they work automatically, and sometimes you just forgot about something. Sometimes you just really paying for something for half of the year.
The number of people who sign up in January, and then by April they're like, I'm still paying for this. It's, so we've had a couple of people already be like, whoa, I didn't know I was paying for Amazon Prime. I never use it. My mom pays for it, so I don't need it, right? And,
Same stuff for me, same stuff even in business. We pay for Atlassian Jira, for example. Sometimes we just forget about it. Then we realize that we are paying for too much working places and etc. Do you plan, for example, by the way, to move to some B2B market, or is it only B2C?
So our testing so far, we've done a little bit of this, and actually starting to have some conversations with a major British bank about this. Yes, in a word. So we've tested our own bank account and a couple of friends' kind of business bank accounts. So our algorithms do work with, so the algorithms we've written do work with with kind of business expenses. So yeah, we use Jira as well, things like Slack or G Suite, whatever it may be, right? We're catching these things. And so the next step for us is to start to build out the relationships and the technology on the other side, the market side, right? So we've kind of done the internal piece. It's what's going on the external, which is a little bit more complicated because it becomes more about content comparison as opposed to just kind of the baseline price and what you're interested in. So why is Trello better than Monday for you, right? Or something like that off the top of my head. Or why would you use Zoom instead of Microsoft Teams, right? Things like that. And it becomes just that much more complex than the kind of retail side of things. And, you know, it's something we'd like to get into anyway. So if we look at why is Netflix better for you than, you know, I don't know, Amazon Prime, or why is Spotify better for you than Apple Music, then it becomes more about content. What kind of things are you interested in? We get deeper and deeper. And so, as I said, we'd like to start with the kind of payments and the usage, and then start to go deeper into what customers are actually consuming, right? What is it that they like to consume and don't like? And then how do we optimize the services they see? And so that is what we'll look at more so from a business perspective is, because, you know, as ApTap, we have the same issues. We'll be paying for some prototyping software we signed up to a year ago, and we're like, hey, we can actually build things now with a real dev team. We don't need this. So let's get rid of it. But, you know, I'm sure everyone has those use cases. It's definitely something we'd like to look at.
Do you only work with recurring payments, or also you show the information about some single payments?
For the time being, it's recurring. It's a very competitive space in the kind of broader transaction analysis or enrichment. Really exciting space, right? Because there's so much data that you can pull. And now that it's being opened up in a secure way, I'm sure there's going to be some really cool companies out there. You know, we've seen, like, you heard of like Token or TrueLayer, OpenWorks, there's Bud, Money Dashboard, and companies like Juiceit a little bit earlier, all in the UK, doing really, really interesting things with this open banking data. But because we're focused on the kind of big recurring payments that you might have, we've decided to focus our efforts on the recurring expenses, because those are often the ones that, you know, it's things like car insurance, things like energy and broadband that you're paying hundreds of pounds a month for regularly. And so these are often ones you can save on the most and start to pay into things that you're more interested in, right? I talked about savings or pension or a holiday, right? We can start to align with what the customer wants. So focus is on that. If we get into further enrichment, it's not something that we'll do in the next few months, for sure.
Why I asked about that, because I always look into my bank account and there are some payments which I don't understand what for, because the LLC, for example, could be called unknown for me. I mean, I can only realize from the amount which I spent that, oh, I bought some jacket for me, for example, but it's not written there. Even in Russia, within our client banks, within our applications, it's difficult to manage your expenses, and you should put it always into some coin keeper or something like that. So the question is, are you going to solve the problem of the finance management, or is it just only some in the future? Someday.
Yeah. So I think that the big kind of problem comes from banks themselves, how they categorize and how they name transactions. So we'll have, you know, two of the exact same transactions. We spoke about this on ApTap. We started doing a kind of podcast video series as well recently, and spoke to Ollie Betts of OpenWorks, I think it was, that said this. But you could go down to the corner shop on my street, and I could pay with my Starling or my Monzo card, and then I could pay with my, you know, Lloyd's or Barclays, and each one would give me a different name on that transaction. And so that's what's really difficult for for third parties like us is because if corner shop XYZ 372489 comes in versus 123768 corner shop, they're the same transaction, but they're named completely differently, and it's about pulling out the individual things in that name, and then how much it was, and when you paid for it, and where you were, and so there's just so much data associated with that. And I think for those individual payments, it just gets so much more complicated, right? But if we can say you have this horrible jumbled up numbers with Amazon Prime in there, then it gets a little bit easier. So part of the reason we started with the recurring spaces is because it is easier to kind of nail those down and do it very well. I think we are. But as we move forward, it could be something that we get into. I just think there's so much to do already, right? And we'd like to, I think the roadmap for us is we've got energy and broadband switching down in the UK. We've got our algorithms that work very nicely. We've started to build up the kind of machine learning AI stuff that will help us build those user profiles. And so next would be the kind of mobile phone industry, maybe car insurance. And they're really kind of busy, but also exciting industries where, in the price comparison space, we don't feel price comparison has changed over the last kind of 15 years. And now it's, people are, all attention is on it at the moment in the UK, especially as with coronavirus, right? People realize, oh, my broadband is really slow, or I'm paying way too much for energy and I need to save some money. And so that's, I think, our focus for now. I'm not sure we'll, and it's not to say we won't go into that, but I'm not sure we'll get into the kind of individual transactions anytime soon.
I see. Yeah, that's obviously. There are some difficulties there, obviously. You said that you've stepped to machine learning algorithms, and it's difficult to start working with that because it's obviously this is the future, especially in FinTech field, and a lot of companies doesn't have experience. Some developers. How do you manage that? How do you do that?
I think, well, first and foremost, right, it's two pieces. One, you want to build it from the beginning, right? So what we're doing is trying to build the foundation with ML in mind and AI in mind, so that as we do grow, we don't have to rethink our whole structure. Secondly, it's about allowing employees to go and do trainings, right? Take a day and go to an AWS machine learning course, right? And so our kind of main data scientist actually did that last Friday. Like, guys, I'm out for the morning. Took 3 hours in the morning to go to this machine learning course with Amazon, and really, really interesting stuff. They're obviously on the cutting edge at AWS. And so I think that's from a co-founder's perspective, right? It's really crucial to be hiring people who want to learn. They might not be an ML 20-year expert. I don't think anyone can be, but with the drive to learn. So recently, kind of hired. I talked about our head developer already. So he's Turkish, has kind of 15 to 20 years of experience. He's brought in a couple of more full stack developers with them. One has PhD, the other master's. So we know their experience, but they're also both have the kind of drive to learn. And then the data scientist we brought in recently was actually a flatmate of mine in university, a housemate of mine. But he's a really hot mathematician, really, really smart. And so we know that if we can give him the data sets he needs, then we can start to build in the right way. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts as a young early stage company, is getting the data, the volume of data that we need, right? So there's that chicken and an egg. We want to be able to sell our product to clients, but clients won't buy it until we've proven it. And the only way to prove it is to run it with data. And the only way to get that data is to get those clients, right? So it's we decided to kind of pull in as many people as we could legally to test our algorithms, to get it to a nice baseline. and then launched our consumer-facing product with a view just to get as much data as we can organically. So we've done no marketing, no nothing on that, and had 150 plus people sign up over the last few weeks just to test out the platform, give us feedback, and that's given us hundreds of thousands or just over 100,000 transactions to start to test the algorithms and things, and it's gone really well so far. So excited about the next few weeks where we'll start to do this banking integration as well. We'll kind of roll that out. We'll do a 3-month period with about 10,000 or so people, and then look to kind of scale it up after that if all goes well.
Actually, I've spoken with a company from Moscow. There are 2 co-founders. They have started their startup with using machine learning. They use machine learning. They started it in university too, and they attended a lot of meetups. It was before the COVID. They attended a lot of different. They reached everything and everybody they could, and they found partners who provided them a lot of data sets to build the algorithms. They built prediction models. They predict behavior of users of applications. So the question is, how are you building partnerships today? Because getting acquainted with huge bank to partner with them, it's really difficult.
Yeah. It's an understatement of the year, I think. Partnerships are complicated, obviously, and it depends what you're looking for, right? I think for me, it has to go both ways. So the partnerships we have in place so far are pretty clear use cases, right? So with TrueLayer, we've got an agreement there that allows us access to open banking information. We sit as an agent of theirs with the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, so that they have eyes on what we do, and it's all regulated and secure. From an energy kind of switching perspective, we work with Energy Links, and so that one kind of adds some clear value as well. So I think any partnerships we do, right, there has to be quite a clear use case and hopefully a back and forth of kind of value as well. And so we look at some data enrichment, but everyone, as I said, I might have mentioned kind of 5 or 6 companies straight away, right, that are doing this data enrichment side. And so it's getting, I think a lot of kind of Instagram entrepreneurs will talk about how easy it is now to start a business, but the threshold of how good your business needs to be has increased because it's become so easy. And so you need to have quite a clean product. So for us, our user journeys have to be really, really smooth and nice. For an ML-based company, right, I expect the next level up if I'm going to be outsourcing it. And so I think that's what we would look to is proof in the pudding. And it goes back to what I was talking about. We need proof, so we need data, but we need partners to get that data. And as an early stage company, we understand that, and we're happy to try and help people out where we can. At the same time, we can't just share transactions. We just can't. It's not legal. And then as we start to work with more and more kind of high profile banks, then it becomes about risk, right? So the big thing for banks is how big is their appetite for risk, and how willing are they to kind of put their brand name on the line for something. And so for something like we're doing, I think in general, it's relatively low risk. But when you start to play with data and what you do with that data, that's when it starts to get a little bit more complicated. So the bank that we're looking at working with over the next few weeks is a big part of that negotiation for this agreement was about data. Who holds the data? Where does it go? When does it go? Why does it go? And how does the user know what's happening? How can they pull their data? All that sort of stuff. So I think with anything ML or AI based, any partners that we might work with has to be very clear as to who owns the relationship with the customer, who owns the data, and how is it all secured. So I think that's a really important piece just to highlight.
The other question I've had about your plans and research is about how is it happen in other countries. For example, when you've got an investments, have you proved that you have a big market that you may go to the other countries, or how was that?
Never easy raising money, or 90% of the time it's very difficult to raise money. And so I think in terms of market size, it's we look at the big comparison sites in the UK, kind of 4 to 6 of them, and they're all generating hundreds of millions of pounds a year. And so in the UK alone, we're talking about an affiliate market. So brands come in and pay advertisers for customer acquisition. That for brands is worth about £16 billion. And then as we look to kind of the rest of, if you talk about the size of Europe compared to the size of the UK, we can kind of multiply that 6 times. If we look at then the US, that's another 300 million people. And then as you get out into Russia or Asia or South America even, or Africa, right, a huge untapped market. One of the co-founders is Nigerian, and I know it's his desire to get us out down there kind of when we can. It's a massive market, right? And as you said, subscriptions are everywhere. Subscriptions are growing. More and more people are paying for things on a recurring basis. We look at something like Klarna, if you've heard of them. They help you pay for things in installments, right? And so then does that payment that's usually a £200 payment up front, does that become a subscription where you're paying £50 4 times? And how do you manage that? I know people like MasterCard are doing interesting things and how customers visualize payments. So as opposed to like a direct debit going out, you have more of like a request to pay that bill from the supplier. And you can say, well, I want to break it down into chunks, or I want to delay the payment and I'll pay interest and things like that. So there's so much happening in the space. I think for a lot of investors, they'll look at us and just be like, oh, price comparison, and kind of swat it to the side. But then when you start to really get into the data, and we think of ourselves as more of a data company than anything, then it starts to get really, really interesting around what can we do with market trends, right? So it's sure we can make commission on switching, and we can drive other revenue sources through licensing fees, and we can pass value on to banks and suppliers. But then how do we go even bigger using those data trends that we're getting, that data enrichment, the understanding of who that customer is? And then if we're talking about the kind of value of open banking, if that's worth however much, that PwC did a study on open banking and valued it something ridiculous. If you can emulate that around the world, what if we're opening up data in utilities and in telecoms? Is that worth the same? Probably. It might be worth even more, right? There's so much rich data out there. So this is a multi-billion, if not trillion-pound market worldwide.
I see. Regarding how are you going to connect the partners, do you provide some API for them and they should build their own interface, or do you provide some kind of framework or personal services for them?
I think as early stage, right, we have to do some bending over for the first big clients that come in, right? So for this bank we're going to be working with, we've done a lot of the front end development work as well. However, moving forward, it's something that we don't really want to get involved in too much, right? We can advise people what the best user journey flows look like and how to present certain things. But what we've done is, build these microservice structures so that we can say, an API, and you can choose, I just want broadband comparison switching, or I just want energy, or I just want your algorithm. Obviously, we offer them as a suite, and that's preferable for us. But it's supposed to be built in such a way that it's really, really easy to integrate. We can help you on the front end, kind of user journey, user experience elements, but isn't a core kind of thing of ours. all that being said, though, I talked a little bit about what the thresholds look like now if we're kind of running a business, right? And for us, user journeys is so important. So if we have a partner who just doesn't care about the user journey and wants to just throw the APIs out there, we'd probably try and coax them into, spend a little bit more time to understand where your customers are coming from and where they want to go with this, and walk them through the journey a little bit more. So I spoke about the kind of subscription store that we're looking to build. Can we then have designed elements within our app of, I don't know, Sky or BT or British Gas or Virgin or whoever it is, where they have their own little kind of profile within your account, right? And keep it kind of co-branded, as it were. And so lots of things to think about, but for us, it's about nailing the kind of data and APIs down first before we really get into the user journey stuff.
Well, about your competitors, do you have someone who built the same things, maybe in other countries?
Yeah, of course. I think, and that speaks to, you asked me about how was it raising investment, and it's difficult. But if we can say, a competitor of ours has raised this much, and they've gotten this traction, but they haven't done it here, that gives us some validation as a business model. Then it's just about execution, right? You need to convince an investor that you're the right team to do it. In terms of competitors, though, yes, we've got probably a big one in the Nordics, called Mina Technologies. We've got a couple in the UK in utility and One Docs. But it's a weird one, because I think we have to kind of work together to start to open up these other data pieces, the utilities and telecoms and things. Because there is a cake to be had. It's just, if we don't open those things up, if we don't together put pressure on the government, on regulators to force suppliers to open these things up in a secure way, then we're either going to be individually building it in a not so secure way, in screen scraping, or we can go through and someone gets a piece of that pie or a piece of that cake off the back of it. So I think it's nice to have that competition. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps a fire under you and moving. At the same time, I think we've looked at what they're doing and said, yeah, we can do that. Let's take it to the kind of next level. And that's obviously no disrespect to our competitors, as I'm sure they'll look at us and think, we can do better than that. We actually had one of our competitors, head of design, this morning. We were doing our stand-up, and we saw him sign up and start testing the app and go through to a switch on energy and broadband. We can see where they are on the journey. And so it's funny, right? You can kind of have a little joke about it. And I think at the end of the day, just kind of focus on what we need to do and what we know we have to do. Any kind of unknowns or anything we can't control, right, is out of our control. It's not worth worrying too much about. Keep an eye on what they're doing, but control the things we can control. I think that's been our mentality through coronavirus, has been, let's just double down. We can't control the market. We don't know what's going to happen with lockdowns around the world. My girlfriend's killing me to come back. She's in the US at the moment. She's like, get back here as soon as possible. I'm like, well, I'm stuck, right? So focus on work and getting the things that we can done.
Yeah, and these days we are experiencing something unseen before. But anyway, I'm optimistic about that. I mean, someday it will going to end.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's I'm no doctor. My brother is, my dad is, and a lot of our family members and friends are. But my dad works in the malaria space and has a little bit of experience around developing vaccines. So he's I think it'll be a while before we see any sort of solution from a vaccine perspective. But as we get through this, I think things will start to calm down. Things will start to normalize a little bit. There'll be new normals, right? There'll be a lot more virtual conferences. There'll be a lot more virtual touch points with customers. And that's again what we're trying to do, right? Is say, stop having to call up your provider and things like that. Have it all within the place where you already manage your money. yeah, so it does kind of play into what we're doing. I think I'm very careful not to say make the most of this opportunity. I don't like calling a pandemic an opportunity, but from a business perspective, it is.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, VC is told to the startups to prepare at least for 24 months, couple of months ago. So it's, I guess it will last until the end of the next year. Somehow different waves. Maybe the businesses would be opened, then shut down again, and over before the really it will be.
We can speculate, right? We can go back and forth about what we think is going to happen, but nobody knows. Even the people at the very top have no idea. It's going to be in and out, up and down, inside out for the next, as you say, kind of 18, 24 months. We shall see.
Traditionally, in the end of the conversation, I always ask about some mistakes, maybe fails, which we can learn from. Could you share something of that from your experience? Maybe about fundraising or
plenty of mistakes. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think okay. So I've been trying to do a little bit more work personally on kind of helping early stage founders, right? So for the sake of self promotion, I put out a kind of starter pack for early stage founders on my LinkedIn. Really walking through the steps from kind of finding, lean startup to product market fit, doing your early marketing and fundraising and things like that. So in terms of mistakes, let me have a think, because there's some. Be really, really cautious about building too early. You don't need to build too early. Chances are the first product you have is going to suck anyway, and it probably won't suit what your customers want. So I think be very diligent on your kind of customer feedback and customer testing. So it's all about defining what your problems are at the very beginning, or what your customers' problems are. Kind of putting together something on paper, right? It doesn't need to be super fancy. It can be a PowerPoint even of, here are the problems that we know the 500 people we interviewed have. And here are the things that we think are going to solve them. Can you then go back out and start to kind of match those together and say, okay, top 3 features that we need to have. And I think doing things like the lean canvas will help you cut stuff that people just don't actually care about that you might. So we've had a number of features that have now just disappeared or are long down the roadmap for us because they are nice to have. So it's not, I'm the customer and I want this. It was, we're the co-founders and we want to build this. And so I think you have to get over that kind of ego a little bit. So I'd be worried about that. If you can, it's a difficult one. If the hiring, I think, has probably been one of the hardest things for an early stage company like ours. It's about inspiring the kind of passion with the vision that you have into new people coming in, offering them options in the company, but knowing that you can't pay them what they're worth, probably. I went to university at Imperial, and a lot of Imperial students will move into the big banks straight out of university, and they're paying them 50, 60, 70, 100,000 pounds a year, and we can't match that, right, for the talent that we need. And so being able to instill that, say, avoid recruiters if you can at this early stage, and then from an investment perspective, really start really early. I think we started a little bit too late on our first round. We had some advice that came from a pretty pertinent VC who said, wait as long as you can to fundraise. And that's okay. But I think, don't wait to start having the conversations. If you can build up your network early and just keep people up to date. So saying, this is the milestone we want to hit in 2 months, and then when we want to hit in 4 months, and then at month 5, you can say, we want to raise X amount in month 6. You're in a much better position than, hello, this is month 6. Over the last 4 months, we did X, Y, Z, and we're raising this much. The people don't know you. They don't know the path. They don't know what went well and what didn't and why. So I think, yeah, that was probably one of our early mistakes, is just not doing that legwork early enough, and we just didn't have the networks to begin with. And so now we do. We're doubling down on that. I've done a lot of that in the kind of banking space. One of the co-founders, Nadal, the CEO, has done a lot more of that in the funding space over the last few months, especially, and with gearing up to the next round. So just some things to be kind of aware of.
Yeah, that's very good advice. It's really, sometimes networking, finding some contacts, new contacts, take really years. I mean, it's like building relationships, finding somebody who trusts in you, who like you, you like him personally. It's really tough work, and especially these days. So
it's so important. I think it's something that's kind of missing from our virtual world at the moment, right? I think in my free time, play video games, right? And you get a lot more of that kind of random, that serendipity, bumping into people and just making a friend right online. Much more common in the video game space than it is in the professional space. And so, messaging someone on LinkedIn, who knows if they're ever going to reply, and if they do, it's back and forth over message. So doing, when you can or when you could, getting out physically and getting in front of people and hunting them or chasing them down. Right? There's so many people that have spoken on stage, and the three of us, the co-founders, will just go and wait for that person next to the stage. And everyone, goes, oh, that was really interesting, can't wait for their next one. But they don't go up and try and speak to these people. So I think just be a little bit, if you ask the questions, get in front of these people, and don't be afraid to hear no or get a rejection, because you're going to get loads of rejections, you're going to fail, but you either learn or you succeed.
Yeah, I always do that. And once even one venture fund in Berlin, they remembered me. They remembered that some guy have asked a lot of questions in different events, and they just came to me and just gave me the card.
And that wouldn't happen if you don't just.
Yeah, if you're unable to go to the stage, just at least ask questions, even online, just coming from me. Well, Will, it was really interesting conversation. I've got a couple of insights how things are going in UK. Something different from Russia. We don't have an OpenAPI, but we are on the go to that point. So when you'll come here to present your startup, I think our government will prepare everything for you.
I hope so. I'm not sure if they'll like my Turkish devs or not, but we shall see. Yeah, I think we're focus is on the UK for 2020, and then we'll look out to the rest of Europe or North America and maybe parts of Asia next year. But it's one step at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks. I hope we will have another conversation with you soon. Maybe about your some new reached goals and some new functions.
Running around and loads of banks and my new yacht and everything.
Yeah. Well, so thanks again. See you.